My aunt secretly recorded me crying on vacation, then sent it to my employer, calling me unstable. When I begged her to stop, she smirked and said, "You're useless. You deserve to die alone." 2 years later, she's standing outside my apartment saying I'm the only family she has left. My parents are the type of people to believe that abuse is a form of love. So the second I graduated, I moved out, didn't even wait for college to start, just lived with my best friend. Her parents were abusive too, but they never hit her in front of me and obviously never lay a hand on me, so it was still a lot better than what I was used to. Until one day, when she finally made things official with her situationship. It's not like she abandoned me, but we went from seeing each other every day to just once a month. I spent Thanksgiving by myself, didn't even go home for Christmas, and tried to take on extra hours at work to distract myself from the unfillable void in the pit of my stomach. But on my 20th birthday, for the first time since I'd moved out as an adult, my family reached out to me, except it wasn't my parents. It was my aunt. Up until this point, I didn't know much about her, just that she had diagnosed bipolar disorder and had once attempted self-unalive before I was born. But this was all information from my mother, who effing hated my dad's side of the family, so I texted back, thanking her for reaching out. In response, she sent me 3 5-minute-long voice messages on WhatsApp. She sounded very enthusiastic and asked if I wanted to come on holiday with her and my granny, both on my dad's side, to France. Well, I had never even been to Europe before, so this immediately perked my attention, and she insisted that she'd pay for everything, and all I had to do was show up. I still had my mom's old complaints in the back of my head about what they were like, so I told her I'd sleep on it and get back to her. After 3 weeks, I was pretty much leaning towards no, but then my granny texted me something that changed everything. It was a single, minute-long voice recording. "Kate, I don't have much longer. If I had one dying wish, it would be for you to come on the trip." Now, to the untrained ear, this might actually sound wholesome, but my granny was only 65 years old, with no diseases and perfectly healthy. Immediately, an awful gut feeling washed over me. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was only 4 nights, and if it meant gaining some sort of family, then it was probably worth it. So I told my aunt I would go, and I was immediately hit with a wave of celebration. Even my dad, the entire reason I was scared of going home, texted me that it meant a lot to him. Fast forward to the trip. When the plane was about to land, butterflies filled my stomach because of how beautiful France looked. We spent the first day resting and re-energizing, and the next morning I woke up to shower. Suddenly, I was interrupted by the sound of my aunt screaming her head off. "What the F, your shower woke me up, you useless piece of poop." I sighed and turned off the shower, getting ready to leave the bathroom, except the bathroom lock wouldn't budge. "Why did you lock it? Do you not trust us? You can't effing do anything by yourself." When I finally unlocked the door, I was faced with my aunt, who was completely red with anger. For the next 3 hours, she continued to scream about how ungrateful I was, how I deserved to unalive myself, and if I died, she wouldn't even bother showing up to my funeral just to teach me a lesson. I just kept responding with okay, because that's what my dad always liked me to do when he screamed at me. Except for some reason, this made her even angrier, and she told me to shut the F up. On the bus to the beach, she even yelled at the parents of the children sitting beside us for laughing too loudly, and when they kept going, she threatened to shut them up herself. The whole time I was staring at our trip itinerary, trying to calculate how to spend as little time with my aunt as possible. But when we got to the beach, something flipped. "Kate, I'm actually so happy you came. I'm sorry I can be a bit grumpy sometimes." I stared at the smile plastered on her face, waiting for the catch, but there wasn't one. I told her I forgave her and hoped for the best. But later that night, my aunt struck again. This time she screamed at me for being a failure, told me that I didn't deserve to get married, and that I was so ugly I should just accept that I'm going to die alone. Up until this point, I had spent the entire trip crying and smoking cigarettes in private just to cope, but I was sick of it. So I calmly walked over to the bathroom and grabbed a weighing scale. I put it down on the ground in front of us and stood on it. "Looks like I'm around 95 pounds at 5'1". Your turn." You see, my aunt was quite overweight. I'd estimate she's around 250 pounds, and the same height as me. In response, her fist met my skull, but it was worth it. She booked me an early flight the next morning, and I hopped on that plane with a huge smile on my face. But when I got off the plane, I immediately noticed I had been spammed with dozens of texts and missed calls. The first voicemail was angry, telling me I was a disappointment to the family. The second was threatening. By the 10th, my granny was begging me not to press charges. After the voicemail storm, I blocked every number tied to my aunt and granny, but I kept the messages saved just in case I needed evidence. I figured it was over. Boy, was I wrong. A week later, I got an email from some lawyer's office. They were claiming my aunt wanted damages for verbal abuse and defamation in a public setting. They specifically mentioned the scale incident. But here's the thing. There wasn't any actual lawsuit filed, just this threatening letter. I could tell it was a scare tactic right away. I ignored the letter. A few days later, I got a text from a different number. It was a video of me crying on the beach during the trip. The caption said, "You'll regret this." Then another text came through saying they might send this to my employer, just to show them what kind of person they hired. That's when I realized my aunt must have secretly recorded me. I went back through old texts from my dad that I'd kept screenshots of from years ago. He used the same manipulation tactics, same phrases, same pacing. It all clicked. My aunt learned from him. Or maybe they fed off each other. Either way, this was definitely a family pattern. I finally told my best friend everything. She apologized for being so distant lately and helped me go through all the evidence. We archived all the texts, voice notes, and emails together. She even helped me organize everything into folders on my laptop, creating backups on multiple cloud services just to be safe. A week went by without anything happening. Then my landlord knocked on my door. Someone had anonymously reported me for a fake lease violation. They said I had destructive tendencies. My best friend stepped in and vouched for my character. After some phone calls, the landlord let it go, but the message from my aunt was clear. She could get to me. My dad showed up next. He texted me a photo of my childhood bedroom. It hadn't changed since I left. The caption just said, "Come back, let's talk." But I knew better than that. I didn't reply. Then my old boss called me. He still acts as a reference for me sometimes. He said he got a weird anonymous tip that I was unstable and violent. He didn't believe it, but wanted to give me a heads up. I was being targeted from all angles now. I installed a door camera that same day. The next morning, I caught someone on video slipping an envelope under my door. It was my granny. Inside the envelope was a photo of my aunt in a hospital bed with what looked like fake oxygen tubes. There was a note that said, "She's dying, just call." I didn't call. Instead, I started researching. I found out my aunt had recently applied for a mental health disability grant, the kind that requires proof of trauma and family rejection. Suddenly, her manipulation wasn't just emotional anymore. It was financial. She needed to play the victim. So I created a strategy. Every time they contacted me, I logged it. I built a timeline of everything. I also updated my resume and started applying to remote jobs across the country. If they were going to stalk my life, I was going to make it harder for them to reach me. The next call I got was my dad's voice. He said he was at a nearby cafe and just wanted to apologize. Curiosity got the best of me. I agreed to meet him, but only in public during daylight with my phone recording in my pocket. He played nice at first, but when I didn't fold, he slipped up and said, "You always ruin things for this family just like you and your mother always did." That was the final puzzle piece I needed. My mother had cut them off for a reason, and now I understood exactly why she had made that difficult decision. I pieced together that the entire trip was bait. My aunt didn't want reconciliation. She wanted leverage, photos, recordings, a way to smear me and paint herself as the unstable, heartbroken relative taking care of the family's difficult child. I hired a therapist the next week, not just for healing, but to build a record of the emotional harassment. The therapist, Dr. Martinez, was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes who specialized in family trauma. Her office had soft lighting and plants everywhere, creating a safe space I desperately needed. She helped me file a no-contact order, not court-mandated, but a personal boundary with teeth, written and notarized. When my aunt tried to post a public video shaming me online, I used the archived threats, recordings, and statements to shut it down via a takedown request. I cited harassment and defamation. The platform complied within 48 hours. My aunt spiraled after that. She sent final texts like, "You'll regret ruining this family, and I'm the only one who ever loved you." But the messages went unread. I had already blocked that number too. I decided to move. I never posted my new city anywhere. I got the remote job I'd applied for months earlier. My new landlord was an old friend's dad who knew the full story and kept an eye out for me. The apartment was small but had good locks, and a doorman who took his job seriously. 6 months later, I heard from my cousin. He was my aunt's son, but we'd never been close. He called from a number I didn't recognize, his voice barely above a whisper. He said quietly that he'd seen the recordings. She'd done this to other people. I wasn't the first, but I was the only one who ever stood up to her. That's when I knew the cycle stopped with me. But my aunt wasn't done yet. 2 weeks after my cousin reached out, I got a package at my new address. I don't know how she found it. Inside was a photo album from when I was a kid. Pictures of me at family gatherings looking miserable. Each photo had writing on the back in her distinctive handwriting. Things like "ungrateful even then" and "always ruining family moments." I threw the album in the trash. But the next day, another package arrived. This time it was my old stuffed animal from childhood, the one I'd left behind when I moved out. It had been cut open and stuffed with printed screenshots of my social media posts. Posts where I'd talked about being happy living away from family. The violation of that childhood comfort object hit me harder than I expected. My therapist told me to document everything, so I took photos of both packages before disposing of them. I also filed a report with the post office about suspicious mail. They said they'd keep an eye out but couldn't do much else without proof of actual threats. Then things escalated. My aunt started contacting my coworkers. She found them on LinkedIn somehow. She'd send them messages saying I was mentally unstable and they should be careful around me. Most of them ignored her, but a few asked me about it. I had to explain the whole situation multiple times, each conversation more exhausting than the last. My boss was understanding. She'd dealt with a stalker before and knew the signs. She helped me lock down my work profiles and made sure security knew not to let anyone claiming to be family into the building. Even though I worked remotely, I still went to the office sometimes for meetings. The next move was more personal. My aunt contacted my ex-boyfriend from high school. She told him I'd been spreading lies about him, which was completely false since I hadn't thought about him in years. He texted me confused, asking what was going on. I had to explain everything to him too. He was surprisingly supportive and blocked her immediately. That's when I realized she was going through my entire history. Anyone I'd ever been connected to online was fair game. I spent a whole weekend going through my social media and removing or blocking anyone I didn't actively talk to anymore. It felt like erasing parts of my life, but it was necessary. My dad tried again after that. He showed up at my old apartment building. My former neighbor texted me that some man was asking about me, said he was my father and needed to find me for a family emergency. She didn't tell him anything, but it scared me that he was physically looking for me. I called my mom for the first time in months. I'd been avoiding her because I didn't want to admit she was right about Dad's family, but I needed to know if they'd contacted her too. Turns out they had. My aunt had been calling her workplace trying to get information about me. My mom had hung up every time but was clearly shaken by the persistence. My mom offered to let me stay with her for a while, but I knew that would just make things worse. They'd see it as me running back to her side of the family. Plus, I'd worked hard to build my own life. I wasn't going to let them take that away from me. Instead, I invested in better security. I got a doorbell camera for my new place. I changed all my passwords and set up two-factor authentication on everything. I even got a new phone number and only gave it to people I absolutely trusted. The process took days and felt like building a fortress around my life, but my aunt found ways around around everything. She started using different numbers to text me. Sometimes it would be random area codes. Sometimes it would be messaging apps I'd forgotten I had. Each message was more desperate than the last. She'd go from angry to sad to threatening within the same paragraph. One message stood out though. She claimed my granny was in the hospital for real this time. Heart problems. She sent a photo of medical paperwork. But when I looked closer, the dates were wrong. The hospital name was misspelled. It was another fake. The effort she put into creating false documents was disturbing. I almost felt bad for her at that point. The amount of effort she was putting into this harassment was sad. She could have used that energy for literally anything else. But instead, she was consumed with trying to control me. My therapist helped me see the pattern. My aunt needed me to be the villain in her story. If I was the bad guy, then she didn't have to face her own problems. Every time I didn't respond, it challenged her narrative. That's why she kept escalating. The breaking point came when she contacted my best friend's parents. She told them I was a bad influence on their daughter, said I was involved with substances and dangerous people. Complete lies, but believable enough to cause concern. My best friend's mom called her immediately. They had a long conversation about what was really going on. Thankfully, her parents believed her, but it made me realize my aunt was willing to destroy any relationship I had just to get to me. That's when I decided to take more serious action. I couldn't get a restraining order without proof of physical threat, but I could make it harder for her to find information about me. I hired a service that removes personal information from data broker websites. It wasn't cheap, but it was worth it. I also started therapy twice a week instead of once. We worked on strategies for dealing with the anxiety her harassment caused. I learned breathing techniques for when I'd see an unknown number calling. I practiced responses for when people asked about the situation. Dr. Martinez even helped me write scripts for different scenarios. My aunt must have sensed she was losing control. Her messages became more frequent and more unhinged. She'd send 20 texts in a row, then nothing for days. She'd call from different numbers at 3 in the morning. She even tried to video call me from her laptop. Then came the email that changed everything. It wasn't from my aunt. It was from her daughter, Patricia. I barely knew Patricia. She was older than my cousin who'd reached out before. She'd moved away years ago and cut contact with most of the family. Patricia's email was long and detailed. She explained that our aunt had done this to her too. When Patricia was 18, she'd tried to leave for college. Our aunt had sabotaged her applications, called her schools, and spread rumors about her. Patricia had to defer for a year just to escape. She included dates, specific incidents, and even some old emails as proof. She also told me about other victims. Our aunt's former best friend who'd had to change her number 5 times. A neighbor who'd moved away after months of harassment. Even our aunt's ex-husband had similar stories. The pattern went back decades. Patricia offered to help. She'd kept records of her own experience. She had emails, voicemails, and even some recordings. She said if I ever needed backup, she'd provide it. It felt good knowing I wasn't alone in this. But my aunt must have found out Patricia contacted me, because the next day things got worse. She created fake social media profiles using my name and photos. She'd message people pretending to be me, saying horrible things. I had to spend hours contacting platforms to get them removed. Each fake profile was more elaborate than the last, complete with stolen photos and fabricated life events. She also started showing up places, not directly approaching me but being nearby. I'd see her car in the parking lot of the grocery store. She'd be sitting in the coffee shop across from my gym, always just far enough away that I couldn't prove she was following me. Sometimes she'd be reading a newspaper, pretending not to notice me. Other times she'd be on her phone, angled just so I could see her watching me. My therapist called it ambient abuse. She wasn't directly confronting me but making sure I knew she was there. It was designed to make me paranoid and anxious. And honestly, it was working. I started changing my routines, taking different routes to work, shopping at different times. My dad got involved again too. He sent me a letter, an actual physical letter to my new address. In it, he said he was disappointed in how I was treating the family. He claimed my aunt was just trying to help me. He said I was being dramatic and selfish. The letter was 3 pages long, each word carefully chosen to make me feel guilty. I wanted to write back and explain everything, but I knew it wouldn't matter. He'd already chosen his side. Or maybe he'd always been on that side and I just hadn't seen it clearly before. Either way, his letter went into my evidence folder with everything else. Then my aunt tried a new tactic. She started contacting my friends' employers. She'd call restaurants where they worked and complain about them. She'd leave bad reviews mentioning them by name, all because they were associated with me. One friend, Marcus, almost lost his job because of it. His manager got 3 complaints in 1 week about him being rude to customers. Security footage proved he hadn't even worked during those times, but it still made his work environment stressful. He had to explain the situation to his boss and HR, which was humiliating for him. That's when my friends started pulling away. Not because they blamed me, but because they couldn't handle the drama. I understood, but it still hurt. My aunt was succeeding in isolating me just like she'd planned, but I wasn't going to give up. I started researching more about harassment laws in my state. I found out that what she was doing could qualify as stalking if I could prove a pattern, so I organized everything chronologically. Every text, email, package, and sighting went into a detailed timeline. I color-coded everything by type of harassment and created a master spreadsheet. My therapist connected me with a victim's advocate. She reviewed my evidence and said I had a strong case, but she also warned me that getting law enforcement involved could escalate things further. My aunt might see it as a challenge and get worse. I decided to try one more thing first. I had Patricia help me draft a cease and desist letter, not from a lawyer but from me. Clear, direct, and documented. We spent hours getting the wording exactly right. I sent it certified mail to my aunt's house and kept the receipt. The letter must have struck a nerve, because within hours of delivery, my phone exploded with calls and texts. Not just from my aunt, but from my granny, my dad, and cousins I hadn't heard from in years. They all had the same message. I was tearing the family apart. But something interesting interesting happened. My cousin Raymond, who I'd barely talked to before, sent a different kind of message. He said he understood why I sent the letter. He'd been watching our aunt's behavior get worse over the years. He offered to talk to her, to try to get her to stop. I thanked him but said I didn't think it would help. I was right. When Raymond tried to intervene, our aunt turned on him too. She accused him of taking my side and betraying the family. She started harassing him the same way she'd been harassing me. That's when other family members started to notice the pattern. My aunt couldn't help herself. When challenged, she'd lash out at anyone, even those who'd supported her before. Raymond started sharing his experience with other cousins. Slowly, people began to see the truth, but my aunt doubled down. She created a family group chat and added everyone she could. Then she started posting my crimes against the family. She shared edited versions of our conversations. She posted photos from the France trip with captions about how awful I'd been. She even created a timeline of my supposed offenses going back to childhood. The group chat backfired, though. People could see how obsessed she was, how she'd twist innocent things into major offenses, how she'd contradict herself from one message to the next. Some family members started defending me. Others just left the chat. My granny tried to play peacemaker. She called me from a number I didn't recognize and begged me to apologize. She said my aunt was just hurt and needed closure. I asked her what exactly I should apologize for. She couldn't give me a real answer. That's when I realized my granny was part of the problem. She'd enabled my aunt's behavior for years, always making excuses, always asking others to accommodate her. She'd rather keep a false peace than address the real issues. I told my granny that I'd already tried to set boundaries respectfully. I'd been harassed for months as a result. I wasn't going to apologize for protecting myself. She cried and said I was being cruel, but I held firm and ended the call. The next few weeks were a mix of quiet and chaos. Some days nothing would happen. Other days I'd get dozens of messages from new numbers. My aunt was cycling through prepaid phones, creating new email addresses, trying any way to contact me. She even tried going through my work. She called pretending to be a client who needed to speak with me urgently, but my boss had briefed reception about the situation. They took messages but never put her through. My workplace became a safe zone from her reach. Then Patricia called me with news. Our aunt had started harassing her again too. Apparently she'd figured out that Patricia had been helping me. Now Patricia was getting the same treatment. Constant calls, messages, threats about ruining her life. But Patricia was prepared this time. She'd been through it before and knew what to expect. She'd already locked down her information and warned her employer. She said our aunt was getting sloppy, making mistakes that could be used against her. And she was right. My aunt accidentally sent me a text meant for someone else. In it, she detailed her plan to show up at my workplace and cause a scene. She mentioned the exact date and time she planned to do it. I immediately forwarded it to my boss and building security. Sure enough, she showed up, but security was ready. They politely told her she wasn't on the visitor list and asked her to leave. When she refused and started yelling, they escorted her out. The whole thing was caught on security cameras from multiple angles. That footage became crucial evidence. It showed her attempting to disrupt my workplace after being told not to contact me. It showed her getting aggressive with security guards who were just doing their job. It proved that her harassment was escalating to physical locations. My victim's advocate said this was exactly what we needed. Combined with all the digital harassment, we could now show a clear pattern of stalking behavior. She helped me file the paperwork for a protective order. Not a full restraining order yet, but a first step. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I was nervous but determined. I organized all my evidence into a binder. Screenshots, transcripts, photos, everything in chronological order. Patricia agreed to provide a written statement about her own experience. But my aunt found out about the hearing. I don't know how, but she did. And she panicked. The messages increased to hundreds per day. She created dozens of fake profiles to contact me. She sent emails to my work pretending to be different people. She also tried to turn the family against me completely. She told everyone I was trying to get her arrested, that I was being vindictive and trying to destroy her life. Some believed her, but more and more were starting to see through her lies. My dad called me the night before the hearing. He begged me not to go through with it. He said it would destroy our aunt and tear the family apart. I told him she'd already done that herself. He said I'd regret this for the rest of my life, but I didn't back down. I'd spent too long letting this family walk all over me. I'd tried to be nice, tried to set boundaries quietly. None of it worked. The only thing they understood was consequences, and it was time for my aunt to face some. The morning of the hearing, I woke up to more messages, but I didn't read them. I got dressed in my most professional outfit, gathered my evidence, and headed to the courthouse. My best friend came with me for support. Patricia couldn't make it, but sent her statement and a supportive text. As I walked up the courthouse steps, I felt scared, but also strangely calm. The morning air was crisp and clear, and I took a deep breath before pushing through the heavy glass doors. The security line was longer than I expected, giving me time to steady my nerves. This was the right thing to do, and I knew it. Whatever happened next, I was taking control of my life back. The hearing itself was pretty straightforward. I presented my evidence to the judge. She looked through everything carefully, asking me questions about specific incidents. I kept my answers short and factual, just explained what happened and when. My aunt showed up halfway through. She tried to interrupt several times, but the judge shut her down, told her she'd get her turn to speak. When she finally did, she went on this long, rambling story about how I'd always been difficult, how she'd tried to help me, and I'd rejected her love. The judge asked her about the fake social media profiles. My aunt claimed she didn't know what the judge was talking about. Then the judge showed her the screenshots with IP addresses that matched her home internet. My aunt went quiet after that. She tried to explain the workplace incident as a misunderstanding, said she just wanted to talk to me. The judge asked why she didn't respect my request for no contact. My aunt said family doesn't work that way. That family should always be there for each other. The judge granted the protective order. My aunt wasn't allowed to contact me directly or indirectly. She couldn't come within 500 feet of my home or workplace. She couldn't use use third parties to harass me. If she violated any of these terms, she'd face criminal charges. My aunt's face went red when the judge read the terms. She started yelling about how unfair this was, how I was destroying the family. Security had to escort her out while she was still screaming about me being ungrateful. I thought that would be the end of it. The legal system had spoken. She'd face real consequences if she continued. But I underestimated how deep her need for control went. 3 days after the hearing, my cousin Gloria called me. She said our aunt was having a breakdown. She'd locked herself in her room and wouldn't come out. She was posting nonstop on social media about being victimized by the legal system. I felt bad for about 2 seconds. Then Gloria told me the rest. Our aunt was planning something. She'd been talking about how the protective order didn't matter, how she knew ways around it, how I'd pay for humiliating her. Gloria was scared. She'd lived with our aunt on and off for years and had never seen her this unstable. She asked if she could stay with me for a while. I wanted to help, but knew that would just give my aunt another way to track me down. Instead, I connected Gloria with Patricia. They worked out a plan for Gloria to stay with Patricia temporarily. It was safer for everyone that way. Gloria packed her stuff and left while our aunt was at one of her therapy appointments. When my aunt discovered Gloria had left, she lost it completely. She called every family member accusing me of stealing Gloria away. She said I was turning everyone against her, that I was systematically destroying her life, but her behavior was doing that all on its own. Family members who'd stayed neutral before started distancing themselves. My uncle Peter, who'd always defended her, told her she needed professional help. She responded by accusing him of being in on the conspiracy against her. Then she made a mistake, a big one. She used my granny's phone to text me. Just one message saying she knew where I lived and I couldn't hide forever. But that single text violated the protective order, and I had proof it came from her because my granny called right after, apologizing and explaining what happened. I filed a police report that same day. The officer took it seriously since there was already a protective order in place. They said they'd investigate and likely press charges. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was criminal harassment. My aunt must have realized she'd messed up because suddenly the direct contact stopped. But she found other ways to get to me. She started a blog about family alienation. Never used my name, but wrote detailed stories about an ungrateful niece who'd torn her family apart. She'd post these long emotional entries about how much she missed her family, how she'd been betrayed by someone she'd tried to help, how the legal system had failed her. Some distant relatives who didn't know the full story started sharing her posts. I documented everything but didn't engage. My therapist said responding would just feed into her narrative. Better to let her spiral on her own. And spiral she did. The blog posts got more unhinged over time. She started contradicting herself, mixing up details, revealing more than she intended. Patricia sent me screenshots of the posts with notes about which parts were completely fabricated, like the story about how she'd paid for my education. I'd worked 2 jobs to put myself through community college, or the claim that she'd taken me in when I was homeless. I'd never been homeless and certainly never lived with her. Then Raymond reached out with interesting news. Our aunt had been calling extended family members trying to borrow money. She claimed she needed it for legal fees to fight the unjust protective order. But Raymond did some digging and found out she'd been fired from her job months ago. Apparently, she'd been missing work to stalk me, calling in sick on days when security footage showed her at my workplace, using company computers to create fake profiles. Her employer had documented everything before letting her go. This explained why she'd been getting more desperate. Without income, she couldn't maintain her lifestyle. She'd been living off credit cards and savings. The France trip that started all this? Turned out she'd maxed out a credit card to pay for it. My dad finally started to see the truth when she asked him for money. She told him it was my fault she'd lost her job, that I'd called her employer and lied about her. But when he asked for details, her story kept changing. He called me for the first time in months, not to apologize, but to ask what really happened. I told him about the protective order, the stalking, the harassment. I offered to show him the evidence. He said he needed time to process everything. Meanwhile, Gloria was thriving at Patricia's place. She'd gotten a job and was saving up for her own apartment. She told me our aunt had been financially controlling her for years, taking most of her paycheck for rent while barely letting her leave the house. Gloria also revealed more about our aunt's past behavior, how she'd driven away multiple romantic partners with her possessiveness, how she'd sabotaged Gloria's attempts at dating, how she'd convinced Gloria that no one else would ever care for her like family did. It was textbook abuse tactics, isolation, financial control, emotional manipulation, the same things she'd tried with me but cranked up to 11 because Gloria had lived with her. Patricia confirmed she'd experienced similar treatment before escaping. Then the police finally took action. They charged my aunt with violating the protective order and cyberstalking. The blog posts, the fake profiles, the text from my granny's phone, it all added up to a clear pattern of criminal behavior. She was arrested at home. Gloria heard from neighbors that she'd tried to resist and had to be restrained. She spent a night in jail before my granny bailed her out, but now she had real criminal charges to deal with. Her lawyer contacted me trying to work out a deal. If I dropped the charges, she'd agree to permanent no contact. I told him I wasn't the one pressing charges, the state was. He seemed surprised that I wouldn't help her out of family loyalty. My dad called again after the arrest. This time he was angry at me, said I'd gone too far getting her arrested. I reminded him that she'd violated a legal order, that she'd had months of chances to stop. He said I was being vindictive. I realized then that he'd never really change. He'd always enable her behavior just like my granny did. They'd rather protect the abuser than acknowledge the abuse. It was easier than admitting they'd been wrong about her. The criminal case moved slowly. There were hearings and delays and legal procedures I didn't fully understand, but I showed up when needed and testified truthfully. My aunt pleaded not guilty and tried to claim mental health issues as a defense. During this time, more family truth came out. My cousin Christine reached out to share her own story. Our aunt had interfered with her wedding planning years ago, calling vendors to to cancel things, spreading rumors about the groom, trying to convince Christine she was making a mistake. Even my Uncle George, my dad's brother, admitted our aunt had caused problems in his marriage. She'd convinced his first wife that he was cheating, created fake evidence and everything. The marriage ended in divorce before he learned the truth. All these stories painted a picture of decades of manipulation and control. Our aunt had been doing this for years to anyone who got close to the family. I was just the first one to fight back with legal consequences. The blog got worse during the legal proceedings. She'd write about being persecuted for loving too much, about how mental health stigma was being used against her, how the family court system was broken. She started gaining followers who didn't know the real story. But Patricia was smart. She created her own blog documenting the truth, not attacking our aunt, but just laying out facts with evidence. Every lie our aunt posted, Patricia countered with receipts, screenshots, dates, documentation. It was beautiful to watch. Our aunt tried to get Patricia's blog taken down for harassment, but Patricia had been careful. Everything she posted was factual and backed up with evidence. The platform reviewed and found no violation. Our aunt's complaint actually drew more attention to Patricia's blog. Then came the final court date. Our aunt had to either take a plea deal or go to trial. Her lawyer had been pushing for the plea: probation, mandatory therapy, and permanent no contact. No jail time if she complied. It was more than fair. But our aunt couldn't admit guilt. She insisted on going to trial, said she wanted to tell her side of the story. Her lawyer looked defeated. He knew how bad the evidence was, but she wouldn't listen to reason. The trial was short. The prosecution presented all the evidence: the fake profiles, the blog posts, the workplace incident, the violated protective order. They even had testimony from other family members about her pattern of behavior. Our aunt took the stand against her lawyer's advice. She rambled about family loyalty and how I'd betrayed her. She admitted to creating the profiles but said it was only to check on me because she cared. She admitted to the blog but said it was therapy for her pain. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail, 2 years probation, mandatory therapy, and a permanent restraining order. She also had to pay restitution for my therapy costs and security measures. Our aunt screamed when they read the verdict. Had to be dragged out of the courtroom yelling about injustice. My granny sobbed in the gallery. My dad walked out without looking at me, but I felt nothing but relief. She served 4 months with good behavior. During that time, the family finally had peace. Gloria got her own apartment. Patricia and I became closer friends. Even some cousins who'd been distant reached out to reconnect. When she got out, our aunt had to wear an ankle monitor. She couldn't use the internet without supervision. She had to attend therapy twice a week. She had to stay away from me and anyone else who'd testified. My granny tried one more time to get me to forgive her, said our aunt had learned her lesson. That jail had changed her, that she just wanted to apologize and move on. I said she could apologize by respecting the restraining order. Last I heard, our aunt was living with my granny and working at a grocery store. She'd lost her professional license due to the criminal conviction. Some family members still talked to her but kept their distance. Others cut her off completely. My dad and I don't talk anymore. He chose his side and I chose mine. It hurts sometimes, but not as much as staying in that toxic dynamic would have. My mom and I rebuilt our relationship though. She was proud of me for standing up to them. Gloria, Patricia, and I formed our own little family unit. We have monthly dinners where we don't talk about our aunt at all. We just enjoy each other's company and build new memories. Healthy ones without manipulation or control. I still go to therapy but less often now. The hypervigilance faded over time. I stopped checking for her car everywhere I went. Stopped jumping when unknown numbers called. Started feeling safe in my own life again. Sometimes I wonder if things could have been different. If she'd gotten help earlier, or if the family hadn't enabled her for so long. But I can't change the past. I can only protect my future. And my future doesn't include people who think abuse equals love. The restraining order is permanent, but I don't think she'll violate it again. Jail time has a way of making consequences real. Plus she's got too much to lose now with probation. One violation and she goes back inside. I kept all the evidence though, just in case. It's backed up in multiple places. Patricia and I joke that we could write a handbook on dealing with family stalkers. Maybe someday we will. For now, we're just living our lives. The whole experience taught me that family isn't about blood. It's about respect and boundaries and actual love. Not the controlling, possessive kind my aunt offered, but the supportive kind that lets you be yourself. I'm doing well now. Got promoted at work. Started dating someone who understands my family situation. Even took a trip to Europe on my own terms. No screaming aunts or fake medical emergencies. Just me enjoying the freedom I fought for. Looking back, that France trip was the best thing that could have happened. Not because it was good, but because it finally showed me the truth. Sometimes you need to see the mask slip completely before you can walk away for good. My cousin Raymond still updates me occasionally. Our aunt apparently tells people I ruined her life, but most of the family knows better now. They saw the evidence. They watched her spiral. They know who really destroyed those relationships. The blog is gone now, taken down as part of her probation terms. But screenshots live forever on Patricia's counter blog, a permanent record of what really happened, in case anyone ever needs reminding. I don't hate my aunt. I nothing her. She's just someone I used to know who couldn't respect boundaries. Someone who thought love meant control. Someone who learned too late that actions have consequences. And that's all she'll ever be to me now.